I'm Jen Thomas. I am one of the co-chairs. My partner, Andrea Stevens, is en route to her daughter's college. She has a game. Her husband, she told him, she said, I'm gonna go to the Women to Women and I'll be home. And he said, well, we have to leave no later than 10. And she says, I'm gonna do that. I said, no, you're not gonna come this morning. You just go on and get in the car with Tremaine because you will not be home by 10. And Tremaine's gonna call me. It's gonna go all downhill and he's bigger than me. We're just not gonna do that. So Andrea Stevens would normally be here as well, and she is the CEO of United Way. So she's an amazing lady. But I have two amazing ladies here with me today who I've had the privilege of knowing Nicole for almost 8 years. Can you believe that? Yeah, it's been almost 8 years. And so our paths actually crossed in business, but then we have a lot in common and it grew into a friendship. So I'm blessed that I still get to call her my client and friend at the same time. So Nicole is smart, tenacious, full of sass, and passion for helping others. She is the managing principal and founder of Sodoma Law. She started the firm with a single location in 2008 and has grown to over 6 locations with more to come. She is a graduate of the College of Charleston and Cumberland School of Law at Stanford University. She has a long list of honors, but a few I'd like to mention. Super Lawyers magazine named her a rising star in 2010. Didn't they know what was to come? And then a Super Lawyer 2011 through 2021. In 2010, just 2 years after opening her practice, she was named to the list of Charlotte's top 50 entrepreneurs of the year. I can attest to the fact that she has grown her impact as an entrepreneur, but the way she has developed her practice is pretty amazing. She truly takes pride in mentoring her young baby lawyers. That's what we will see here today. This is the first time we've had co-speakers. Normally it's just an individuals. We have co-speakers for our series. And I believe you're gonna see the power of not just each individual lady's journey, but the power of that mentor-mentee relationship. In addition to being an attorney, a businesswoman, she's also an author, podcaster, speaker, and probably the most important roles, wife and mother, 3 awesome boys. There is so much more I could say about Nicole, but I will leave that for her to share. So Nicole, thank you for being here today and sharing your story and being a friend. And then we have Miss Chelsea.
Gajewski. That's okay.
I want to think like Mike, the little guy off of Monsters Inc. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Still wrong.
Yeah.
Chelsea is the managing attorney for Sodoma Law here in Belmont. So I had the treat of meeting Chelsea several years ago, actually at a Women Who Rock lunch, remember? And then we went to lunch, and I was immediately drawn to her by her sweet, funny disposition. But don't be fooled by her sweet disposition. She knows what she wants, and she goes after it. When we had lunch, she told me then, she said, I'm gonna manage a practice here in Belmont in a few years, and she sure enough did. She is also extremely passionate about her clients and her community of Gaston County that she now calls home. She's a graduate of the State University of New York College at Fredonia and then Charlotte School of Law. She too is a rising star, in fact, a Super Lawyers Rising Star in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. She is named Business North Carolina Legal Elite in 2023 and 24, and she is also a 2023 graduate of Leadership Gaston. So it's my honor to welcome and introduce Nicole and Chelsea.
Thank you. That's nice to meet you.
Usually when I speak, I have like PowerPoint and then Chelsea and I talked, and then we decided that we were going to keep this really casual. And Chelsea sent me some notes last night, and I think the easiest way to start is maybe just tell you a little bit of background about myself, and then Chelsea can tell you her background and how we met. I am from Florence, South Carolina. So I kind of feel right at home in Gastonia. This feels like home to me. But it's also, being from Florence sort of draws me to where I open offices, it kind of turns out. Florence, if you don't know about Florence, it's the midpoint between New York and Miami. I call it the denture capital of the world because it was the first place to have 24-hour dentures. You might not have known that about my little hometown. I nickname it DC, denture capital. I come from a long line of dentists. They were a little upset that I became a lawyer, but they decided that it was time that I had one in the family, right? I started pretty ambitious. I graduated high school when I was 16, knew that I was ready to get on with life, and went to the College of Knowledge, where I didn't learn much. But there was something that felt different once I got to college, and my example of sort of, and now that I'm a parent, I look back and say like, oh, that was, I wonder why I didn't see that then, but I was driving down, I was living in Charleston, working, going to school, and I had started, I was involved in some nonprofit work through some organizations on campus, and I was driving down the road, and I saw this big sign, and it was a billboard. I remember where I was. I had a bag phone with me. And the sign said, the billboard said, if you can read this sign, call, and it was a phone number. I can tell you the phone number still. So I did, and I was at 18 years old as I was about to be a junior in college, and I went and learned how to teach adults how to read and write. It was a literacy program through TRIDA. And, it seemed so normal to me, like, of course, I have the ability to teach, and that just made perfect sense. Like, why wouldn't you do it, was the answer to the question. And so, there were 3 humans that I remember very vividly, and I remember the lady who taught the program, said, don't go to their house, that's too close. And of course, what did I do? I would go to their house. I learned so much about myself and about how easy it was to teach and to give back. And I didn't know that later on in life, like 30 or 40 years later, that the reality was when I wake up in the morning, the thing that drives me is to lift up people around me. That is, I don't know how, with the law firm, we joke, like my moment where I felt like I arrived was, I was at a yoga retreat in Mexico, and this gal across from me said, what do you do, Nicole? And I said, I'm a lawyer. And she said, where do you work? And I said, Sodoma Law. And she said, oh, they were amazing. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. I have built this brand, and that was like such a real moment for me. And so lifting people up, understanding, what drives me, my why, is really the background on how the law firm started. That really, I hope that gives you a sense of who I am as a human. And I think it's how we pretty much got here.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Alabama a day in my life, and my uncle who lives in DC asked me if I needed a passport to get there, because Alabama's where I went to law school. And I have lived in Charlotte since 2000, and with the exception of a couple of years in Seattle. And
Why did you come to Charlotte?
that same uncle in DC, I had narrowed it down to 5 cities when I graduated. But they don't tell you how that works when you get out of law school. They don't say oh, you need to take the bar in this state. You have to figure all that stuff out on your own. And 3 of the 5 cities, I'd missed the deadline to take the, it's a little different now because, so I missed it. But I remember when I moved to Charlotte, I came down, it was a holiday weekend, to interview with one of those big giant firms. They offered me a position. It was a 6-figure job. I walked outside. They had me at a conference room table, and there were 30 lawyers filing in and out. They offered me the job. was gonna make $103,000 a year in Charlotte as my first, but I would never see the sun, you know? And I walked out on the street, it was gonna be in like securities law, I had to look that up in a book. Yeah, and I walked on the street and seriously y'all, I lit a cigarette, cause that's what I did on the street
I'm
in
learning
Charlotte.
so much right now.
Yes, I called my mother and I said, I think they're talking about offering me a job. The money is crazy. I put out my cigarette and said, I'm going into decline. That's not where I wanna be. It's not worth it. And I hated Charlotte though. I took this girl drove by me in a BMW because I was pulled out too far. I'm not a good driver. I was pulled out too far and she drove by and she shot me a bird.
A girl in a BMW shot me a bird yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was probably the same girl. Yes. And I took a picture of Charlotte in my rearview mirror and I was like, I will never be back. And then I came back. But I have loved, I mean, I really do. I love the Queen City. I love everything around it. I love that we're 3 hours to the beach and 3 hours to the mountains, and it's been a great place to raise my kids, my boys. Yeah, so that's a little bit it in a nutshell. It's like this much. Yeah.
I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and I went to SUNY Fredonia to be a social worker. And then I soon realized I'm too impatient to be a therapist. The thought of like dealing with somebody for years about the same issue, I just knew I wouldn't have the patience to do it.
The irony that
Yes.
she ended up in this field.
Yes.
Especially
So
family
I was
law.
like, yeah. But I feel like family law, I feel like there's more results sooner. So decided to go to law school, and I was looking all over, including Buffalo, but I just felt like I wanted to leave. I mean, it's dreary there, it's cold, there's nothing going on. It's not like the young professionals that you get here. So I liked Nicholas Sparks movies, and they were all filmed in the Carolinas. So I was like, I just need to go to the Carolinas. So then I went to Charlotte. I almost actually transferred back to University of Buffalo after my first year, but I was like, I just do not want to go back. My mom's still there, my stepdad, my stepsister, and my brother was there at the time, and I decided to stay. And all throughout law school, I was like, family law, family law, family law. And I love talking to people, especially one-on-one, so I just started networking. I got an internship in family law my second year of law school, and I didn't learn a lot, and so I was kind of iffy on the program. But then I met this woman named Irene she came to speak at our school, and she described family law in a completely different way. It was more about helping that person get to the next chapter of their life, and I was like, yes, that is what I want. And so I started to work with Irene for about a year, and I was finishing up law school at the time and getting ready to take the bar, the worst time of my life. Yeah, it was not great, but I got through it, and then I started the job search, and I had no idea where to go, what to do, and I think 5 of the women I had networked with said, you need to apply to Sodoma Law. You need to apply to Sodoma Law. Nicole's there, you know, she'll get you started in your career. She's a great person to learn from. And so I applied, but I think I harassed you. I think I probably sent you 5 emails like, Miss Sodoma, like, please, please, please. And then I remember getting the interview, and you weren't even in the interview. It was 2 women that are still there today, but all of a sudden this woman opens up the door, and your hair was a little different colored at the time.
Probably.
So I didn't recognize you, so I didn't realize it was you in your photo. And you're like, hi, I'm Chelsea, I've already called Irene about you. And I said, oh, okay. And then she blew past out, and then I got the job offer. Yeah, and I was hired to be your second chair. So sometimes, well, when you're learning, at least in my experience, which has been the only experience, because it's the only firm I've ever worked at, when a senior attorney, they can get somebody who should train underneath them, and it's called a second chair. So I was hired to be your second chair, and they had me take a personality test. So there was me and one other young attorney, Nicole and this other woman, they both needed second chairs. And we took a personality test, and you and I were paired. I don't remember why, but it worked out.
And we said, as we were like trying to figure out how it was gonna work, what ended up happening, it was the survival of the fittest between the 2 lawyers we had hired.
Oh, yes.
Chelsea made it. The other lawyer did not. It was not, even with the personality test, I mean, it just shows that like, you just can't figure everything, but, Chelsea was, she came into my office, and I mean, it's not something I'm super proud of, but
The first day.
yes.
Yeah.
Cause I warned her, I was trying to give her some constructive feedback, but I know I make people cry sometimes. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna disarm her. I'm gonna disarm her by telling her that she might cry. And she was, I think you were offended. Like,
Yeah, I was like,
what? And of course, that means she didn't cry, which was amazing. But I maybe have been known to make some people shed tears.
yeah.
But I would say that's, I mean,
But how far have we come since then? Like, I don't think you'd ever say that to anybody again.
well, no, I learned.
Yeah.
I learned that it was probably not the best way to disarm. Well, I've come a long way since then.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done a lot. We've done a lot together. The law firm, you know, the history of the law firm is that, I just moved back. My then husband and I had, I'm a marriage loving divorce attorney, right? So hope triumphs experience. That's what I heard in the courtroom when I told opposing counsel I was getting married. That's what she said to me, hope triumphs experience. Good luck. I went unmarried and not engaged and quit my job in 2005 and on a whim with someone that I had met. Our first date was like maybe August, September. He asked me on November 3rd if I wanted to move to Seattle by email. So like 1, 2, 3, right? How many months? And then we moved to Seattle in February. Not crazy. So I quit my job and moved to Seattle, Washington. And we were there 2 years and came back, and which I was loved. I mean, the law firm where I was had been sending me coffee mugs from Charlotte. Like they sent me pencils and calendars and just all things Charlotte, like come back to Charlotte. So I did. I came back and I went back to work at the firm where I was. And at this point, you know, fast forward, I had a 9-month-old, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table with his dad. And I said, I feel like I can do something different. I feel like the way I take care of my clients, I just feel like, you know, I'm a new mom. I feel like I can work a 50-hour week in 4 days. I can do a different schedule. It's so hard being a mom and a litigator, because you are, you know, even when you're a part of a big firm or a part of a small firm, you run your little business under this house, under this brand. And so I remember he said, how much revenue do you generate? And I was like, I don't know. I do know that I have a lot of happy clients, and like that's what drives me.
And you were in family law at this point.
Right, I was already in family law. I'd started in business for a couple of years and then moved over to family law. And that is actually my theory about, you know, the practice is if you're taking care of your clients, like the rest will come. And so most lawyers, we talk about billable time because that's, you know, we're paid professional services for the way we think and strategize and write and talk and argue, critically think. But, you know, if you're taking care of your clients, all that stuff happens, you know. And so that was, you know, part of how I teach inside the law firm. Anyway, so the law firm, I went to work on Monday and said, I'm gonna open a practice. And the gentleman that I was working for, by Wednesday, he was like, I think you should just go. We totally divorced in the middle of the office. It was horrific for me, very traumatic for both of us at the time, but I opened 2008. We went from 2, my paralegal came with me. We went from.
Real quick, what's funny though is the people that work for that same law firm now, he'll say, this is where Nicole Sodoma sat, so you have a good seat, like for his new associate.
Oh, really? That's so
yeah,
funny.
okay.
Oh my
This is where
gosh.
she sat, so you got big shoes to fill.
Oh, Lord,
Yeah.
that's funny. The law firm went from 2 to 12 in the first 12 months, and not because we were posting ads, and we happened to all be women, but I think that was because the draw was like, we can do this, we can do it differently, and that is really how it happened. We all were sharing, we had one guy, he was a legal assistant, but he's now a lawyer. We've had several legal assistants go to law school, which I think I'm so proud of us as a practice in general. But we all had the same bathroom, which means we all kind of knew the same, we knew our schedules. It was very weird. So after the first year, I started looking for a new place. We moved, so it goes like this. 2008, 2010, we moved into a bigger location. 2013, we outgrew that location, and we added a second location 0.9 miles from the first one. There were 2 historic homes. I call it like the his and hers, because one was like you wanted a glass of champagne, and the other one was you wanted a glass of bourbon. Yeah, they felt very different. That was 2013. 2015, Penelope Hefner emailed me, and I really wanted us to have a Spanish-speaking lawyer, and it turns out she was Spanish-speaking and Greek. And I mean, she's amazing. And we opened, after she was with us, maybe a couple of years, we opened Sodoma Law Union, which is in Monroe, has just been amazing. In 2017, her bestie from law school Robin Lally, we opened York, Sodoma Law York, which is in Rock Hill. 2018, we outgrew our spaces on East and Moorhead, and we bought, with the help of Jennifer as our lender, we bought 217 North Graham and renovated it. And it was an adaptive reuse project, and the building is tremendous. And I'll tell you, so surreal. We literally ran that project. It was only women. The architect was a woman. Jen was there. The project manager from the construction company was a woman. We were all women. It was so crazy to look back to see what we accomplished together. Our super was the only man, and he was so brave to deal with us. He still has to deal with us. His name is Dwayne. God bless him. So we moved those two buildings into one. 2020 happened. We moved into the building, and 2020 happened. 21, we opened Sodoma Law North with Sarah Bennett at the head, and then we opened Sodoma Law Greenville.
23.
In 23, and then 2024 we opened Sodoma Law Belmont with Chelsea at the head, and she said, I'm doing this. I don't know when this is happening, and I was like, yes, it is happening, whatever you want. And then I guess next year it looks like we're going to open in Raleigh. So really exciting. There are 37 lawyers now. I think our staff is 80.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But from a leadership perspective, lawyers are not. I'm curious what Chelsea's take on this is too, because lawyers are not. We are not trained to be leaders. We are not trained to run businesses. We are not trained to take care of anybody other than our clients. We're not trained to take care of ourselves. And so you don't learn any of that in law school. And so leading a practice, first, I had to learn how to be a leader. And I still struggle with my own leadership skills, and I'm constantly working on it. Reading, and as my husband, who Jen introduced me to, by the way, I call him my beautiful giant Egyptian. He tells me that when he's scrolling on Instagram that he's micro-learning. So I'm constantly, I'm using his term, I'm constantly micro-learning online and reading. And in fact, Chelsea and I, as part of our relationship and prepping her to lead Belmont, to lead Sodoma Law Belmont, was we went to a Brene Brown leadership training. And so, and we got to learn so much about each other in that, and we actually struggled, we struggled to communicate because we communicate very differently. And so what was your experience doing the Brene, y'all know who Brene Brown is? Might go learn her. She's amazing. She's amazing. I might kind of stalk her a little bit, but,
She's a social worker, right? Background?
I mean, she's a PhD.
Okay.
She studies human behavior. She is incredible. She lives in Houston.
Yes.
Yes.
I think
She,
there's a show about her on Netflix.
I mean, her books are
Yeah.
amazing.
Journaling.
Yes, you should, Brene, B-R-E-N-E, Brown, Brene Brown, she's great.
Yeah.
What was your experience with Brene Brown,
Well,
her leadership program?
Well, and also just backing up a little, it was interesting because when I did start, I was working underneath Nicole, and then the trajectory is you're supposed to get your own cases and you're supposed to be your own little team and then build your team from there. But it was interesting, and I want to hear your take on this. But I was like ready to jump out the nest and get out from underneath Nicole and this other woman's cases. I was like, I'm ready to take my own cases, and you were kind of like, no, I don't think you are, and no, I want you to stay here. And I was just like chomping at the bit, and so other attorneys started to give me cases little by little.
That was a big shift.
Yeah, I feel like that was more of my personal trajectory in the firm of, wait,
Yeah.
I need to get away from these women who've taught me all these things, but figure out how I want to lead my own cases and build my own practice. And so it was nice because not only did I have Nicole's mentorship, but I had all the other women's mentorship in the firm. And so I took a little bit of everybody to now what I think is how I practice. But then it was, okay, yeah, I want something more. I want to be on leadership. I want my own practice. And you had come to me about Greenville, about opening up Greenville, but I did not want to take another bar. I did not want to sit through another test. I didn't want to move. And so in the meantime, I had come to Belmont, obsessed. I mean, everybody just knows each other, the community, like the fact that I see Emily at 5 random events and I don't even know you're gonna be there, I love. Or Patty knowing you again. So when Greenville, I was like, no, and then I even thought about Raleigh. But the timing didn't work out. So then I said, I think we should serve Gaston, Cleveland, and Lincoln counties. And her husband actually owns a business in Belmont. And so I think it kind of,
Family.
family owned, sorry. I think it was kind of, she was like, okay, Belmont's it, you know, I love this town too. And so, yeah, we did Belmont in February and it's been going really well. But before we opened up Belmont, she was like, I want you to take this Brene Brown class with me. And I was like, okay, I always want to be better, learn more, you know, I want to be a great leader for my team now. And so, yeah, and it was funny because the leader of the Brene Brown course, I think she called you and she said, are you sure you're gonna be comfortable with Chelsea there? Because it's all about vulnerability. And she said yes, and there were some vulnerable moments, but I think my core values are understanding and joy. And so the more I understood about Nicole, I think that really, it was like a catalyst for us, I think after that training of, okay, I understand her better, she understands me better, now we're communicating. Yeah.
And I mean, so many of those tools that, like communication tools are so important. And it's funny, when we were talking about coming and it was about mentor, mentee, I was like, that feels weird too, because I feel like I'm your colleague. And like when Chelsea says that she worked underneath me, I'm like, did you? Like, I don't really see it like that. Like I see it.
I still kind of see it like that. Okay, so Nicole kept wanting to make this about teaching everyone about family law. I was like, Nicole, it's not about family law. It's about mentorship, mentor-mentee. And a couple times she's like, let's, can I buy a car? Like the most common question a client will ask. I'm like, no, Nicole, it's about mentor-mentee. And so then I was second guessing myself. I called Jen. I was like, Jen, is this about family law or is this about mentor-mentee? And she's like, no, you're right. It's about mentor-mentee. I go, even though I've known Nicole so long, it's hard for me to be like, Nicole, you're wrong. It's about this. So that's funny because I still look at you. I mean, I still think you're my mentor.
But I said the same thing to you.
Yeah.
I said, I know, I saw her title, I'm like, she's not getting it.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, y'all, that's what we do, family law.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know about family law. But you don't want to go somewhere and tell somebody you're going to learn about family law. So I was like, this is a good beer.
Yeah.
this is a good cover. I was like, at the end of it, we should have them ask us questions about family law. That's really what they want to know. And then she
I
sent me
go
the
about
YouTube
your
links,
career.
and I was,
And when
Oh,
you
yeah.
said that, I go like career questions, like why did you choose family law? You're like, no. Why do you want to buy a car? And I was like,
oh yeah, you want, well, but I mean, there's so many things I love about the building of a relationship with your mentor, with the person that you're, teaching and lifting up, and finding the person that will do that for you, with you, that will invest in you is so big. But then when you get there, how you communicate with them, what your comfort level is, what your vulnerability is. In fact, a few months ago, Chelsea called me. I was firing off emails from my car. Or I think you called me and you were like, you need to not send that email again. Like, I need to tell you something. She disarmed me. It was basically saying, I'm gonna make you cry. She was like, that email, I don't know how you said it, but like, learning how to communicate with the person you're learning from and the person that you're teaching, I did not realize how important that was. And so now, we have a leadership team. At Sodoma has a leadership team, which is different. We run the law firm very differently from other traditional law firms. We do not have a partnership model. We have Chelsea will one day own Sodoma Law Belmont. I teach her along the way. She learns along the way. We both learn hard lessons, but how to build a team. And we learn that in our leadership team, and our leadership team is made up of lawyers and non-lawyers. The whole idea being that everyone in the law firm should have a voice, not just the lawyers. And like, that's part, I think, of the leadership approach, because what's the difference between leadership and management? I mean, there's a very big difference between, y'all know that, right? There's a very big difference between leadership and management. And so, I think like lawyers in general probably are good at managing stuff, but leading, inspiring, being curious, asking the right questions, learning when to use vulnerability, learning who your audience is, like, that's sort of part of the art of being able to create something bigger than yourself.
yeah, and I think, we did the Brene Brown training, and Nicole led me, but now putting it all into practice at the Belmont office, understanding what one person may need versus another person, how one person may take a text or a Teams message just fine, and another person, it makes them very upset. I think actually putting into practice has been my hardest challenge this year.
Yeah.
So, but it's about getting to know those people, understanding what drives them, and pivoting your own self and your own, routine to that has been difficult, but it's also been interesting. But I enjoy that leadership is not just attorneys, because yes, one day I will own Belmont, but understanding the HR perspective or the financial piece of running a business, which I had no idea before. So every time we have these meetings, I learn a little nugget of information. Thank goodness I have these people to rely on so that I can still practice law, but it's helpful. It's more of like a roundabout, let's prepare this person in a collaborative, full way, instead of just you continue to practice and we'll manage all these other things.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that right about the time that Jen and I met, about 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, I was leading the practice. So now, at the time, I don't even know how old we were. I don't know how old the practice was then, but I had an employee who handled a really significant part of our practice. It dealt with accounting, and I knew that, like, when I started the firm, I wanted to know all the positions. So I started it with QuickBooks. I learned QuickBooks on the fly. There was another office manager in town who would come over at night and teach me. My 9-month-old, who is now almost 17, I love him. I adore my boys. Yeah, so all through, I guess that through my little timeline, I should say I had 3 kids. But everything in building the practice, I wanted to know how to do it myself so that, well, you know, I mean, I would be a backup to anyone, but I also wanted to appreciate what they did in their role. And so I felt so held hostage by this employee because I had grown and had stopped doing, I didn't have enough eyes on what she was doing, but I knew that she had really lost her buy-in to the practice and that we were struggling. I went and I got invited by another woman lawyer who owned another practice in town, and she said, come with me to listen to this guy speak. And so I went, and it turns out I was in this room full of business owners and decision makers, and that I was not the only one that felt held hostage by someone who wasn't performing up to my standard of what I would say was necessary at the time. And so I joined Vistage. The guy was a chair at Vistage, and Vistage, essentially, he ended up not being my chair. I moved to a different chair, but I'm in a group with other business owners. There are no lawyers in that group, but you know, I think that's been part of my growth too, is being able to take issues, because we, you know, if you are a decision maker, if you are a business owner, if you are growing a team, you know, a lot of the pain points are the same, but you don't want to take that home, says a divorce lawyer. Don't take it home to your partner. Your friends don't want to hear about it, I promise. They want to hear about it like the first time, but then they don't want to hear about it again. Writing in a journal doesn't solve the problem usually. Microlearning might, therapy might. But the person who ended up being my chair, I'm still with that group. The other, you know, we've changed some of the members of the group, but that's been a big part. And he's kind of like a business consultant, and I've learned quite a lot from that group. So I feel like, and actually, he has. I guess my point is that there's no one size fits all on how to grow a business, how to lead a team, how to mentor, and recognizing that there's so many resources. And if all you're doing is complaining and trying to figure it out on your own, you're really missing out on great opportunities. And so, and I love that about Chelsea. When I said, hey, let's go do this leadership course, she was like, sign me up, let's go. And that takes time away from, you know, her business and but she really sees the value in that. So, and I think that is, you know, for all, like when I sit in a room with all of our lawyers and I tell them we're gonna do professional development, you know, the assumption is that we're gonna do continuing education on things that are legal. But ask them about what professional development they do, what individual development they do, and they're like, what are you talking about? It kind of goes the same for self-care. You know, for years I would put fake things on my calendar so that I could go on a run, or I'd go in phases of what I'm addicted to. So I was addicted to Orange Theory for a while. I'm still on and off addicted to yoga for 20 years. I'm addicted right now. But I would, you know, make stuff up on my calendar because it was shame if you leave the office in the middle of the day, or if you're late, or if you leave early to go exercise, even though, you know, self-care is so important to being able to show up and give. But I mean, I really felt lots of shame for doing that. So, you know, it's weird. I'm in this group, and you know, it's weird because the men in that group don't feel that same shame. And so, isn't that so weird? Like, I'm always so fascinated by that. Do you feel shame when you go exercise?
If I'm leaving work early, yes.
Isn't that strange?
But it's interesting that you say that, because now I'm mentoring somebody. She's my second chair, my baby attorney, and the things that I learned from Nicole were, you know, like she's gonna do leadership Gaston next year because those were things that were instilled in me as I was growing. But like yesterday, she had to go do something where she was like, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna be late, I have to go to the doctor's. I go, it's okay, Molly. Like, you're great. Like, you got a good work ethic. It's just finding that balance. But yeah, those are things that I think you instilled in me that I'm trying to now instill in Molly. And I think it's going pretty well.
Well, if you have the right level of professionalism and recognize that this is a career, this is not a job.
And I think there's a layer of trust too and respect. So I respect Molly, I respect her time. She does the same for me, and she's hardworking, and I trust that if she's gonna do something, she's gonna do it, she's gonna do it right, and she's gonna do it on time. And so then that allows more flexibility, in my opinion. I think that you would give me a challenge. I would show you that I checked that box, and you'd be like, okay, let's give you, okay, now you can move up. I think once you saw that I could do more, would you agree?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes.
Or was it people, like Penny had, cause so my first hearing in court, Penny gave me, the woman who runs union, cause Nicole was like, she's not ready. And I crushed it, of course. And Penny, I'm assuming Penny said to you, it's time.
She did.
Yeah.
She called me and she was like, let her fly.
Little birdie, she calls me.
Yeah, let her fly.
Yeah.
So I came, I'm old school. I'm at 25, this next year will be 25 years of practicing law, and I came from a place where, you're 3 years in the nest. You want to go in and be, if you are going to excel, you need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be prepared for whatever's gonna come at you. The generation now, they're a year out of law school.
Molly's about to be a year, I'm gonna tell her to.
Yes, and they've had so much success, but I'm like holding my breath, because I hold family law so close to my heart, especially after being divorced. I see family law very differently now. I was the least likely person to be separated. That's what I said. Yes.
That was what is it called?
Huh?
A superlative? You got voted?
Oh no, but wouldn't that have been amazing?
I was like, who's again?
That's in your high school yearbook.
I know.
I was like, okay, Florence, yeah.
No, we actually did superlatives, and I got the most text messages in a day. Yeah, they did that. When I separated in 2019, and I feel like I want to go back and reteach so many things to, we call them baby lawyers, to the lawyers we raise, for sure to the clients, because, family law is its own animal. You're dealing with some really big issues that have real big consequences. They're life-changing, and for the most part, our clients, they're experiencing the biggest thing in their lives most often to date. And so I take that role very, very seriously. And so the idea of sending a lawyer who's only been out of law school a year in to manage somebody's real life changes felt heavy to me. And my first hearing, when I was a baby lawyer, I lost my ass. And it was because it was a domestic violence hearing, and it was a guy who the allegation was that he had committed domestic violence, and I represented the mom, and he lied on the witness stand, and I couldn't prove it. No matter what. I wasn't prepared. I said, oh my gosh, I told one of my judges, I was like, people lie. And she was like, you're a dumbass. Yeah. And I mean, maybe she didn't call me a dumbass, but she was like, ding ding. Like, anyway, so I just didn't want to have anyone else experience that. But the reality is you have to have your failures, but it's really brave to go in after, it's not that people aren't capable of it, but they have to really appreciate the value they bring and the consequences of what happens in that courtroom.
And it's interesting because I'm not married, I hope to be one day, and I don't have children yet. But I feel like my compassion, my understanding allows me to acknowledge those things and appreciate them just in a different way.
Right? I mean, when I decided to write a book, when I'd always wanted to write a book, and in 2019, when I decided to really sit down and do this, my inspiration was there's so many things I have to teach that my clients weren't telling me, and you know, it was. I remember one of the things was I was on a soccer. It was a football field. It was also a soccer field. Anyway, watching your children leave with another parent, another family that's not your family, like. My middle son was walking ahead of me, and he kept turning. He was walking with his future stepmother and her parents and his dad. I mean, there were so many people there, and my youngest son was ahead of them, and my middle son kept turning around going, "I love you, Mom. I love you. I love you." But he was like, had to get ahead, and I'm walking behind with one of my dogs, and I got in the car, and I just went, oh. Like, no one told me about that. Like, I felt like I needed to share those stories. What that was the experience of, because as a lawyer, you're like talking about where the transition's gonna be, and you know, what are you gonna have 2 uniforms or 1 uniform? And there are all these like little nuances that you don't think about. That you want your lawyer to be thinking about for you. Not all lawyers go to that level of detail, but like really experiencing it. I wanted to go back and reteach so many things, and so that was kind of how the book started. And that was like, I feel like the next big thing. Have you read it? Are you lying?
We talked about this at the CLE. I read it.
If you want,
That's what I'm talking about.
If you want to write a book, what would you write a book about?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
You could totally write a book. I had a judge call me I haven't told you this. I had a judge call me, it's 2 weeks ago, and she said, "Who's that Chelsea?" Nobody can pronounce your last name. Say it again.
I'm hoping I like marry a Smith.
I want you to keep.
Don't change your name.
Okay. You guys pronounce it, and then.
Okay, you ready? This is what I did at the grand opening.
Yeah.
Gajewski.
Perfect.
Go ahead, try it again.
Gajewski.
Yes.
If they don't know you, you'll know why.
Yeah.
I went from Stone to Cransler with a K
Okay.
and Z. I love it, because if they don't know how to pronounce it, they don't know.
Oh, I love that. That's
I
a
like
great
that.
mind shift. Thank you.
Ah, that's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
A judge called me a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "This is what I'm telling you, you should write a book." She said, "I don't know who that Chelsea is. Like, I don't know. She's not been in my courtroom." She's like, "But I'm reading one of her pleadings right now, and it is unbelievable. She left nothing out. She was like, you know, we have a choice when we write pleadings. A pleading is anything that gets filed with the court, basically. And we are essentially in notice pleading state. So all you have to do is tell opposing party what your claim is. Now, there's certain like statutory guidelines depending on what the claim is, but in general, you don't have to say you're a horrible human and this is why. You can just say, I have a claim for blank. I want the judge to help me determine custody."
Schedule, yeah.
Yes, right. Well, Chelsea knew her case and her client well enough that the judge told me it was like 14 pages of just.
Well, yeah, you gotta get it out there.
Yes.
You gotta tell the story.
So I'm like, so what are you gonna write a book about?
Not that. Finding love. Maybe a manifestation book.
Oh, yes.
I have to read one now. If anyone knows anyone single men, 30 to 40, let me know.
There's a book called Manifestation
Yeah.
that I've been reading, and the author and I are gonna do a live Instagram whatever those are called,
Yes.
in November, and so I've been reading the book, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, picture
I
sending
know,
it to
I'm loving
Chelsea,
it.
picture
Yeah.
sending it to Chelsea. Yeah, we're gonna manifest. Does anybody have any questions for
What's
us?
the name of your book?
Oh, it's, Please Don't Say You're Sorry.
And why is it titled that?
I need that book. That's all I say.
You should stop. You should stop. Yes. Please Don't Say You're Sorry is, first of all, I think as women, especially generations before us, but it bleeds over into our generation. We say we're sorry for everything.
Yep.
Everything. We do, and it is amazing what happens when you quit saying you're sorry. And it doesn't. You can feel sorry, but there's so many other words to replace it. And I was at an event one night, and I told somebody that I was getting divorced, and they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I was like, "Why? What? Why are you sorry? You know nothing." Like, there were all these other things that you want people to say, but making me feel like a victim, making me feel like I was in a position for you to feel sorry for me, and not knowing the circumstances. And frankly, when you go through any life changes, especially separation and divorce, like, it takes a lot to feel empowered. One of my favorite phrases is you give permission to what you tolerate. And I have it written in any place that I can have it written. And there are so many things that, in a marriage, in a partnership, work, home, that we do tolerate. And so just, I don't know, the idea of having someone feel sorry for me felt, so that's why I named it Please Don't Say You're Sorry. Yes. And it is broken up into marriage, separation, and divorce, and knowing what's possible and not possible, because it takes two to say I do and one to say I don't. Meaning, if you break that down, when you decide to get married, two of you have agreed this is what you want to do. You want to commit to each other, but only one of you can decide that you don't want to be married anymore. And so I'm really not the greatest dinner guest, because you sit around a room of married people and you're like, so when the other person comes home and decides that they're I don't know, having a midlife crisis, or met someone else, or is sick, fatally ill, or there are all these things, or they just don't love you anymore, you've grown apart. Like, it doesn't have to be super salacious and whatever. In fact, 76% of this was in a report last year, 76%, I think it's 76, of divorces was because of lack of commitment. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Which often leads to infidelity, alcoholism, abuse, all these things to try to stick it together. Anyway, I think I've lost my train of thought, but
Please don't say you're sorry.
please don't say you're sorry.
And it is a great book.
Mm-hmm.
And you would assume that it is all about divorce, but it's not. It really is about, in my opinion, preparing people for the things that you aren't prepared for. And
If somebody decides they don't want to be married to you.
or if you are, to your point, I think sometimes you guys hit the nail on the head. For me, communication in anything and everything is the most important, regardless whether it's mentor-mentee. I think from my perspective, communication is very important from banker to client, because we all have different communication styles, and I might think one thing and Nicole might think something else. And we've had those times where we've had to go, no, wait a minute, I think you're thinking this and I'm thinking this, and let's talk about it. So I think communication is important in everything, and certainly in marital relationships or significant relationships. But I think it goes back to, if you're not having those conversations, what I took from the book when I read it was, if you are finding yourself in a space where maybe you are contemplating that this is not your human any longer, but you want it to still be your human, what are things you can do to get back on the same page? And a lot of it came back to, it's communication. You're just not talking to one another. And sometimes that happens because, you know, you grow up and you grow apart, but you grow apart because all these things are happening, life's happening, work, kids, and all the things, and so you end up not talking to each other. But I know when I met Nicole and her first husband, the first time, I remember thinking, now she's a very powerful woman, clearly, okay? She's a very powerful woman. And I got that from my first interaction, but when I had an interaction with them together, it was amazing to me. I could see that during that whole interaction, she was making herself small because she wanted him to not feel small to her, because it was all about Sodoma law. It was all about Nicole. And it's been a pleasure to watch her grow, in my opinion, to really grow out of that in the last 6 years or whatever. And she's really come into her own. She's, you know, she would never make herself small for the Egyptian.
Yeah,
And he's a big, tall Egyptian, by the way. So she would never make herself small to him. As a matter of fact, the truth of the matter is, you would think she's probably 6'5" when they're together, because she's just grown into the woman she is today. But at the same time, she's very compassionate. She's a great mentor. She wants people to do well, and she's grown even in her business practice. When she says, you know, she doesn't want anybody to, you know, be able to take advantage or have something over on her. It's been fun to watch her grow from, you know, banker, nerd, financial, to watch her grow in that as well. So my question was going to be just around that communication, like how do you carry that into your daily practice as well? Because I mean, that's a big part of, I think, what we're all here about is not just leadership, but also you're building a business of some sort. And you know, how do you utilize that when you're trying to make sure that you are having great conversations with, whether it's a client or a prospective client or whatever the case may be? But
I over communicate. If I have a phone call with a client, I follow up and communicate via email. I communicate with my team all the time. Like, okay, this is when you're supposed to do this, and then they're supposed to let me know when they did it. And I've found that that has helped us tremendously. And if there is a misunderstanding, we talk about it probably person to person, and then we follow up an email.
just like yesterday when you called me, you're like, hey, I think we're all off base here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So clients are in crisis mode, but attorneys identify and define crises different than the client. And so understanding and respecting that difference. And I think the best attorney is gonna be able to apply, you know, communication skills to their clients and understand like how to, this is kind of an overused phrase, but like meeting them where they are, I think is really important. I think that, you know, one of the things in it, but communication goes beyond just, you know, how you're communicating with your client, but also how you're communicating with your team and how you're communicating with opposing counsel, and, you know, recognizing what your strengths are. I love the idea, you know, it's all about, you get to choose how you respond to people. Viktor Frankl is attributed for having this fantastic quote about, you know, basically between stimulus, it says something like, between stimulus and response, there is space, and in that space, there's the freedom to choose. And so really finding that space when you're confronted with crises, when you're confronted with a screaming client who, you know, is going through something that's really, really hard, and taking the space and then choosing how you're gonna respond, I think is really important. And, you know, if you are really applying what you're learning in all parts of your life, at work and at home, and knowing how to apply it. I mean, I think it's really, like you said, like it's hard to stop and say, wait. And I always tell Chelsea, and we learned this from Brene Brown, and I tell Chelsea and I, we talk about this in our leadership team a lot, like, be curious before you respond. Ask questions. You know, don't make assumptions about what someone's experiencing, even though you know that you probably know because you've been through it so many times with, you know, the thousands of clients before them. But ask questions, because we're all experiencing it very differently. So, does anybody else have any questions?
It wasn't so much a question as, you've heard of storyboard, NPR?
Yes.
You guys should immortalize that conversation. conversation. So find one somewhere, cause Charlotte is done for a little while. But, you should find wherever they are around that you can do that, because, I mean, it's a fantastic conversation that I think, regardless of what field you're in, that is worthy of hearing.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And I think you helped me back in 2009.
I don't know what you're
Or
talking about.
somewhere. I do, I mean, in Monroe, were you in Monroe, 2009,
I mean,
2008?
I was
Almost.
everywhere. I was starting a business, so anywhere anybody needed me to be, I was there.
To follow up on kind of what she said, I thought it was, very dynamic, the interaction between the two of you, because if the whole idea is the mentorship, seeing the trade-off and how in a true mentorship, there's trust, there's love, there's respect, and in that comes growth and a sharing that you guys have. Like, you see it going back and forth. It's not a one-way projection. It's definitely project, absorb, and she projects. And you guys really symbolize exactly what a mentorship is supposed to be, in my opinion.
Aw, thank you.
Oh my gosh, we'll be here every week.
Showing next.
Did we inspire anybody to do something different?
Yeah, even though I just came in, like, my brain just jumped right into the conversation. I love it. When women have the chance to really voice their opinion about relationships, cause a lot of people look down on it, like, you know, you need to know this person before you move to the next level. And through the things that I've been through, you can never know someone 100%. So the fact that you said, that one minute you're in love and there's many reasons why people are in and out of a relationship, that just really honed in to me, because that let me know, okay, I'm not crazy. It is just not me going through these crazy things with men.
Well, I think about, like, the people we marry, I always say the people we marry are not the people we divorce. But think about all the changes in any relationship. You don't need to be married, right? It could be any relationship. Chelsea and I 10 years ago were two very different human beings. And so recognizing how we change, how we evolve, where we grow, I mean, it might not be the same person. By the time you, like, the person, and in fact, at the beginning of all of my consults, I ask how they met, because I want my client to remember what it was like when they were in love, what it was like when they met that person, how they saw that person, because by the end of the consult, I know what I'm gonna hear is a lot of, you know, it's gonna be tough, and there's nothing we have not heard. We have heard all of it, good, bad, and ugly, and, you know, there's nothing really surprises me anymore, which makes it interesting to be married. So yeah, I mean, like, and you're both gonna grow differently, and you know, at different paces, and the things you're gonna experience, you're gonna receive them differently. And the older you get, I think the more complex it becomes, because, you know, even if it's just aging parents, or, you know, growing children, or, you know, having teenagers, or whatever it is. So, like, recognizing those things, but it takes two, you know.
Where can I get your book?
Oh, it's on Amazon, and if I could have a side hustle, I did my own Audible. Oh my gosh, that was so fun. So I did Audible and Amazon.
Thank you.
So I will ask a question about family law, right?
Oh, yes. I knew it. She wants to know.
Give
She
her
should
a
get a card.
redemption.
I'll ask because I have a friend who's dealing with a custody case, and her attorney told her that she was filing, and that was, I was so upset for her, because I'm like, why would he say, and he's a man, I'm like, I was about to say, where's his office? Because I will go and talk to him, but.
Refer her to Chelsea.
I would, and so that was the question, you know, is it that she doesn't have to keep him, she can, okay.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that for choice of words. Talk about knowing your audience, like, not
Okay.
good. But, I had a lady, and this is, and I know Chelsea's heard me tell this story. She, gosh, it was a really difficult custody case, 2 kids, there were some, drug abuse issues, and I saw that family at their worst. And, and for all the Christmases that followed, she sent me a holiday card of her kids. And she said to me, she said, I'm really a nice person. She was like, but you've had to see me at my worst. And I mean, it was a really pretty awful divorce. And so like, your friend, she's in crisis, right? And a lot of times when clients are in crisis, they call all the time, they email all the time. Any way they can find you because it feels like crisis. So setting it, my advice for clients is always like, set expectations with your attorney. If you wanna talk, like attorneys are luxuries, there shouldn't be your therapist. You know, the most important thing is to make sure that you're being educated on options. So because you don't want that attorney on your payroll for the rest of your life. Like, they have to set you up for success, right? And so what expectations do you have of the attorney? And the attorney should communicate what expectations they have of you. So, you know, I always say like.
I always say it's a partnership.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you your options, the risks, the benefits, but you decide. I'll tell you what I would do. You want to know, but you decide.
So like, I always say like, instead of you emailing and calling, like, hold all of it and let's talk every Thursday at noon. And if you don't need me at Thursday at noon, call the front desk. Just tell me you don't need me. When I went through my own divorce, I do this with just about all parts of my life. I list, anytime I have a thought, I write it down. And then by the time I get to problem solving, some of the things aren't as important anymore. And so I tell clients that same strategy, like, and there can be so many things that freak you out, and you don't know what to do about it. So you write it down, and then by the time we talk, I'll bet half that list you've already figured out. Think about how much you'd save on attorney fees. If when you're spiraling, you know, when you're in crisis, you don't talk to your attorney. And unless it's an emergency, of course, you know, like obviously there are accident circumstances, but.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest thing for me when he said that to her was that he kept asking her for more evidence and more things. So he's telling her, send me this, send me this, send me this, and then told her that she was spiraling. Baby, you just asked me to send you all of this.
Well, listen, finding the right attorney, that attorney's your voice.
Yeah.
You know, like, who do you wanna be your voice, and do they believe in you, and do you believe in them?
That part.
And so, you know.
There's trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll say like, I'll take your, I have said, like, there are plenty of lawyers who are gonna take your case and take your money, but I'm not gonna lose, so like, I don't wanna lose. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's part of it, and lawyers will take any case, so long as